Hello everyone, welcome back to this month's Hack the Box Tampa Meetup. We'll be going over, my name's Slangin, I'm the current host, and my co-host is Sam. Welcome
Furio.
back. Yeah, Furio. As you can see, our handles are not updated all the time. Um, Today we'll be going over Scriptkiddie and Knife, the two easy boxes, which are sort of fun to play around with in the Hack the Box labs. We're going to take the next probably 5 to 10 minutes. If anyone wants to participate in the labs, we do have a dedicated lab, so please reach out to either Sam or I on Discord, Fury or Slangin, and we'll make sure to add you to the lab so you can follow along. So we'll come back around 12:10ish and start the walkthroughs. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us in the meantime. See y'all shortly. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. To start the demo of these two boxes, we're going to go forward with Sam demoing Knife, and then I will follow with Scriptkiddie. So without further ado, go ahead, Sam.
All right. So we're gonna get started here on Knife. It should be. Yeah, it is. There we go. Okay. So we've got our IP address here. I already went ahead and added it to my host files. So just add it there, and start off with an nmap. Sudo nmap default scripts service enumeration. And we'll let that run in the background. And then while that runs, I'm just going to check and see if we can get anything like a web page or anything. And so it looks like we have like a some kind of health service page. We have some buttons, but we can't click anything. Try inspecting. See if we can get anything in here. It looks like a pretty cookie cutter web page template. Can check and see if we get any interesting requests. Doesn't look like it. We check for some cookies as well, see if we can get anything that might give us like, you know, kind of a like an insight more into what kind of services it's running. And it looks like that's the only thing. So we have SSH, and we can take a look at this SSH version. But typically, doesn't look like there's anything. Yeah, so typically these boxes are all going to have SSH, so that way once you get the foothold as user, you're able to, you know, add your SSH key and get a more stable shell. So I usually just ignore this. I'll take a look at the version, but this is a pretty standard OpenSSH version, so I'm not seeing anything there. And we have this web server, which we already enumerated, right? We know it's a medical server, and we have the Apache version, so we can take a look at that and see if we can find anything there. We've got a couple CVs, but these are all super low level. Not really seeing anything too crazy on any of these. I'm sure, you know, there's some vulnerabilities we could mess with that, but it doesn't seem like this is an older box. So this is definitely, you know, these are all exploits from the last year or so. So you know, definitely not what they intended when they created the box. So the next thing I'm going to do here, since we don't have any kind of cookies or anything that we can actually interact with on the web page, and you know this is really all we have, so it's pretty certain, at least at this point, that we're going to have to do something with this web server. So I'm going to run whatweb, which it's kind of like Wappleizer, if any of you know what that is, but it'll essentially enumerate the entire application stack and see what other services are running, because the base Apache version is not vulnerable, but there could be some other kind of service that it's running that we can mess with. So I'm just gonna run whatweb, and we can run HP. So we have the Apache version, IP address, and so we have this PHP version, and this is a production server. So seeing anything with dev is kind of interesting. This X powered by header is also pretty interesting. So I'm gonna take a look at this. This is probably something we can mess with. And the first result is RCE, so it's a pretty good sign. Let's take a look at that. This is a blog. Yeah, so it's a backdoor RCE arbitrary code with a user agent with 2T's header. So we can see. So it looks like they have a Python script. So let's open both of these and take a look at these. Make this bigger. So it looks like the backdoor is with the extra T and then Zerodium, and whatever command you want to run is following the Zerodium command. Yeah, so we can run one of these scripts just to see like how it works. With something like this, I usually like to actually exploit it myself instead of just using like an arbitrary script, just because it's a little bit more fun to me. Um, but we can just do this just to give it a try. So let me grab this. All right, so it looks like the command that it's giving us is this, and then we've got our target URL. So we'll clear the screen here. So run this, and target URL, which is going to be http knife.hackthebox. Attacker IP is going to be, let's get a new terminal. So we're running on 10.10.14.2. And we need to set up a reverse shell, so let's make this a lot bigger. And we can so let's just grab this here. And I believe that this is should be everything. So you can run that, invalid character. Looks like there's something wrong with the actual script. Let's see. That's because it didn't actually save the Python script. That's cool. Well, I can just grab the script itself here. That's because I curled the wrong page. Oops. Well, we can just do this. Save that, and we can give that a try again. There's our other terminal here, and see, and it looks like we do have a shell here. Yep, so we do have a shell here. I'm gonna get rid of this. I want to try to actually, mess with the exploit itself instead of, just like I said, you don't really learn anything just by grabbing a script and running it like that. So I'm gonna reopen that actually and see what we have. I'm gonna grab run burp suite for this. So let's clear this again. So if we grab burp suite, we can start temporary, and we can intercept just a base request from this web page and kind of mess with it a little bit, see what we can do. So let's start our proxy intercept, and we can send that to the repeater. So it looked like what it did was using, so we have to add a T to the user agent, and then whatever command we want to run, it follows. So let's get rid of this and 0dm, yeah. And so we can just run run just a generic system command. Let's run like ls and just see if we can actually get this to work. Put specified. Oh, we need a semicolon here, I think. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so we got bin boot. We got the directory listing. So this is exactly how we're gonna do it. Go back here and let's grab a new terminal, and we can do the same netcat command. So what we're gonna want to do here, we have a run system command. So let's just get the reverse shell. So we'll do bash tech-c, and then invoke bash tech-i. We want to, for that ampersand, we need my IP address, or it's like /dev/tcp/ what's my IP address again? It was like 10, I think it was 10.10.14.2/137 and 0 caret ampersand 1. And this should be correct. Let's see, you're able to get that? No, you're not. What did I miss? Oh, I forgot the single quote at the end. There we go. There we go. So, syntax error there, but we got this. So, we do have our shell. It's the same one. And so let's do upgrade our reverse shell. So do Python 3 tech-c import pty dot spawn bin bash. I need a single quote. Bin/bash. That looks good to me. Cool. And then we'll just do Alright, so now our shell is a lot better. Oh, we didn't set the term. Yeah, so std it's just gonna stop the echo. When we run like who am I, we're not gonna get who am I James. And I didn't set the term, but it should be fine. So let's go to cd home, and we can cat out our user.txt. So we do have our user flag. We can go submit that. Okay. I do have burp running, you are correct. Let's turn that off. That's a very good catch. There we go. Okay, so we have our user flag now. So we can mess a little bit more with this. The exploit itself isn't actually that bad. Um, I don't know. I don't know why this is. I mean, I know it was a backdoor, but I don't know why they put things like this in production servers, but that's what it is. So we have our user account. Let's go see if there's anything else here we can look at. So if we wanted to upgrade the SSH connection, we could cd into the SSH directory and grab this ID RSA, or just upload. Um, you know, we could upload our own SSH key. This is usually fine, especially for a box like this where it's not like you're not going to be sitting on it for hours usually. I really don't mind. The exploit itself was super easy to run, so I don't really care if it craps me out of the box and we have to rerun the exploit. But if it was like a more complicated foothold, then I would definitely want to cement being able to just SSH back into the box pretty easily. Um, we can actually just do this. So let's cat this ID RSA key. We can just grab this here. And I'm just gonna throw that in. Let's go to save that as ID. Oops. ID RSA. So let's just save that on our system. And we are going to have to move this into the authorized keys to be able to actually use it. So let's just mv this ID RSA into, it should just be authorized keys. Cool. So now we can go open our other terminal here. So this. Hackbox knife, and we need to chmod this, so it should be 600 for the ID RSA, and now we should be able to SSH ID RSA. It'd be James at knife.hackbox. Host verification failed. Interesting. Oh, okay. Oh yeah. I did give it the chmod. Is it? Yeah. Yeah, doesn't that, I believe that typically is what it just looks for an authorized keys file, no? It should typically, let's try this. Let's see if this one works. Error in libcrypto. Oh, okay, it's a issue on my end. But like I said, like this is a pretty simple exploit, so I'm not gonna spend time bashing my head against the wall when we already have the foothold here, right? So at this point, we can cat out um, our let's see. I think usually, when we get this kind of foothold, we can upload something like linpeas and run a script like that, which, on an actual pen test, it's going to make a lot of noise, but in this case, it's fine. The first thing I always do before I, go out of my way to, spend time spinning up and getting scripts up onto the box, I always just run sudo tag l, and what that will do is tell us, if there's any binaries that we have permissions to run as sudo, which is, a pretty easy prevesc method. And so in this case, it looks like we can run knife as sudo. So let's just see if we have like a man page for that. We do not. So we can take a look at this a little bit more. Oh, I see. It's searching. Binary user bin knife. So it looks like it's a chef binary. So like more of a DevOps type tool. And oh, that's just an error issue. We do have GTFO bins, which I'll get to. But it looks like it's a command line tool for interface between local chef and chef intro server. So we can probably run some kind of commands with it. Yeah, so it's just a tool to interface with cookbooks, which is, like more of a DevOpsy thing. GTF opens is wonderful. So what this will do is show us, allows us to break out of environments using certain binaries. So in this case, we have, ability to execute knife. So if we were able to run just a command with knife, but we didn't have a terminal, we'd be able to, use it to execute and break us into a terminal. And the other thing is, since we're allowed to run it as super user, we can elevate the privileges. So it doesn't drop the elevated privileges and allows us to access the file system. So in this case, it's essentially the same thing. It's just executing throwing us into a shell, but running as sudo, it's not going to drop those permissions, so we'll be able to drop into a new shell as root. So since we do have access to run knife, all we have to do is run sudo knife exec e and then execute bin shell, and we can check who am I, and we have root. So with something like this, it's running Ruby, so you could have it run other things, but the easiest way to break out of the environment is just to have it throw you into shell. So we can cd into root, and we can cat root.txt, and we have a root flag. And what is this? Delete. So we have, I don't know what this is, but it's some kind of script to delete something. But yeah, so that's the box. The actual foothold in this case with a lot of these older boxes is the main. It's like your main objective. Once you actually get there, the prevesc is not as in depth as a lot of the newer boxes are, but learning how to identify these kind of vectors is pretty important. So you have I always I think this box is a really good example of why you should always just start with like the low hanging fruit. So there's no reason to go out of your way to set up linpies and everything when it takes 2 seconds to run sudo tac l and that's your prevesc. And you'll see that in a lot of different things. It's a lot faster just to take what you're given and work off that. So that's the box.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sam. Next up is Scriptkiddie. So I'm just gonna remove this real quick, and I will go take Sam off the stream, and I will share my screen. So I enjoy Scriptkiddie because me personally, and I think a lot of people start this way, I learned information security, cybersecurity, penetration testing as a Scriptkiddie. I was the teenage kid that was finding scripts on the internet and running them without sort of reading into them. Which is why I like this box, and it's one of my favorite boxes because it teaches you a lot regarding the penetration testing process. As you can see on the right hand portion, I spun Scriptkiddie up, and this is the IP for my box. So the first thing I always do is just ping the box and make sure I have a connection through my VPN profile, and 950.150, and I do. Cool. So since I have a connection, the next step is going to be scanning the box. So what I do is run nmap, which is a network mapper. I'll explain these flags in 1 second. 10.129.95.150. You can also export the IP into a variable to make your life easier. However, I'm also somewhat lazy, which is why I typically type things out because I don't feel like typing export. So this nmap script is going to be a script scan, which is seen through the TAC-SC. It's going to be checking TCP ports. TAC-P-TAC means it's going to be scanning all 65,535 ports. TAC-A is a in-depth enumeration, so it's checking for OS version, the service versions of applications it finds running on this box, among other things. And then TAC-ON is I'm saving the output in nmap or normal format, and that file is going to be called nmap.init. So if I run this, it's going to take a little bit. So as I said earlier, I'm impatient. So there's a great tool called RustScan, and RustScan is a network mapper that is a lot more lightweight than nmap. And by lightweight, I means it can find ports a lot quicker, just due to the nature of Rust being a more lower level programming language and the way the script is built. So as you can see, if I hit enter, it already found 2 ports, 22, which is SSH, and also port 5000. So we have 22 and 5000. Let me move this over a little bit. And as you can also see, our nmap script came back. So we have SSH 8.2 P1. If we do a quick search exploit, just out of curiosity to see if it's vulnerable. Typically, SSH versions aren't vulnerable. They're not your main vector, but you never know. There's nothing in search exploit, so I'm not going to dig deeper into it. What interests me is this HTTP server that's running a Python server on port 5000. The title of this webpage is Kids Hacker Tools. So before I visit the webpage in my browser, what I'm going to do in the background is run Nikto to sort of poke and prod the website to see if it finds any vulnerabilities that are outstanding or anything major that I can sort of dig deeper into. On top of that, I'm also going to run dir search to look for any directories for this website. To run Nikto, it's just the name of the tool. It's downloaded by Kali. It downloaded onto Kali by default, the TAC host, and then the IP and port you want to scan. And then to run dir search is going to be the IP, so TACU for the URL, so the web page I want to search, and then TACW for the word list, and I'm just going to use my default favorite of going to sec lists. I don't want license, I want discovery, web content, directory list, 2.3 medium.txt, and then TACT is just for threading, so it sort of speeds things up. As I will keep mentioning, it's sort of known I'm impatient. So I hit T, hit that, and that should kick off. Looking quickly into here, we see nothing really out of sorts. The only main thing is it's saying Python 3.8.5 is outdated for this server. So while those are running, I'm going to copy my IP and actually go to this port 5000. And look at this. We have an nmap scanner, it appears, a payload generator, and some search exploits. I always sort of view the page source to see if there's anything underlying, any sort of development file, script file. My brain can't figure out the word that I'm trying to talk to. Looking for anything that points to credentials or a service version that I could play around with and sort of delve deeper into. We have this hacker CSS file. Just scanning through it, it looks like it's just a CSS file, nothing really important. If I inspect element, I go to network, I'll reload the page. We have favicons coming, and then we have a Git for this web page. Let me make that bigger. Nothing major. Nothing like that. I can check robots.txt, see if there's anything within that file. Not found. Also try the same for sitemap XML. Not found. So it appears that this has nothing hidden or no mistake. Like, in other words, a developer didn't make any mistakes and left any cookie crumbs in the website's development. What interests me next is these sort of, I don't know what the term is, boxes that allow me to, it appears to run an Nmap scan to generate it. I'm going to guess by the way this looks, because we have Windows, Linux, and Android, it's going to be an MSF Venom payload generator, and also search exploit. So if I type, let's do PHP 8.10, because that was what Knife was. Oh, it's loading. Just do 8.1, because I think I might have killed the website. Oh, there we go. So it actually is working with search exploit. So there is search exploit running on this web page. Can I generate a payload? If I do 1111, what generate a payload for me? Wonder, let's try this as well. I'm gonna go back here. So it does generate a payload. Interesting. If I spawn a Python server, there's also a very cool tool called Updog. My Kali is being temperamental right now and is giving me issues, so I'm unable to spawn Updog or use Updog for this demo. Essentially, what Updog does is it takes out the hassle of having to spawn an HTTP server using the http.server module in Python. Instead, you can just type Updog and it'll automatically spawn it in your directory, which is very useful if it's a nice tool to have, so you don't have to remember again the TACM HTTP server, what directory you're in, stuff like that. So I wonder if I can scan my specific IP. So I'm going to split this. And I also have these 4 panel terminals. I'm using Terminator, which is an application that allows you to run multiple shells in one sort of bigger picture. It's very useful if you're running multiple things like I am doing right now. So I want to look for my IP. So my VPN IP is going to be under ton 0. I'm using a VPN IP because I'm VPN'd into Hackbox's lab platform. So it looks like I'm 10.10.14.43. So I type 10.10.14.43, and let's change this to 80, because 80 is a typical port that should be scanned in the top 10,000 by Nmap. If we scan that, it looks like I got a connection callback error. Connection reset by peer. Interesting. So as you can see, I did get it did hit port 80, so it is calling back to my local machine. So that's an avenue we can discover. What I want to look at next is there's all these 3 different services. So we have search exploit, we have MSF Venom, and then we also have Nmap running. I don't have a service version for these different applications on this web server. However, I want to just know if there's any vulnerabilities present for these applications. So you search exploit, and I type Nmap. Let me make this bigger because it's kind of tiny. Oh, this is going to be irritating. There we go. So we have an arbitrary file, right? So I'm going to keep that in mind. Android, Apache Struts, Bacon Map, Edge, and then ZenMap DOS. We don't want a denial of service. We're not running Snort. So we have a potential with the arbitrary file, right? Let's try. It says Venom it up, so I'm guessing based on the naming schema for this portion of the web server, it's going to be MSF Venom, which is a tool utilized to generate payloads for both Windows, Linux, Android, anything you want. There's a whole wide variety of things you can utilize that tool for. So if I do MSF Venom, we do have an exploit. Specifically, make that bigger. It's an APK template. Let me just make that even bigger. APK template command injection. So what if I remember searching through here, there is an Android portion, so it makes sense that this may work because Android files are APKs. But before I go down that path, I'm going to just make sure there's nothing for I'm going to search exploit. Cool, there's nothing there. So I'm intrigued about this MSF Venom exploit. So I'm going to MSF Venom. No, that is, I need to do search exploit and then MSF Venom. This number here correlates to the exploit DB database identification number. So if I go to the internet and I do exploitdb.com, and I want to see the actual script, if I type that number in, that should correlate. Let's try just finding. So you can get it by the name. I don't know what the ID for it is, if it's changed. 49491. I thought I typed 49491. But as you can see here, we have the source code for this exploit. Reading through, it's changing the payload, so it's running ID, and it's setting that to creating that file at the temp under win. It's base64 encoding a payload, echoing that payload, decoding it, and running a bash. Manufacturing APK, payload dname, printing the name of the file it's creating, assigning that to a new file, encoding it, creating it, APK call, yada yada yada, and it's telling you to use this payload, create this further exploit, or to further utilize this APK file this exploit is creating, is to run this command right here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy that over. But beforehand, this box is Scriptkiddie, so there is one thing I want to check. So MSF console has a bunch of these exploits pre-done for you, so you don't have to mess with the script file and sort of manipulating it. It's more of a, I wouldn't call it a Scriptkiddie tool. I can't speak English. Scriptkiddie tool, because it is utilized in a lot of environments for higher level stuff. But a lot of people learn penetration testing through MSF console just because of how easy it is. So if I run TACQ, it takes away the ASCII art. Usually it shows like a duck or some binary picture, binary art. But I just want to get to the console. As you can see, I'm running MSF6, so I'm on the 6th version, or version 6 of this console. And if I search for the MSF Venom, we can see this command injection is already in here. Let me zoom out a little. That should be, let's do that. It's a Rapid 7 exploit. It's using an APK template command injection. So if I do U0, because we want to use this exploit, because I think this is where it's going, we have a payload. I don't like that it's using a Python interpreter reverse a TCP, so I'm going to do show payload, show payloads, and then we get a list of payloads. If I look through, I just want a Linux payload because this is a Linux box. You can tell this is a Linux box because if I read out that nmap, it's running in Ubuntu. So the OpenSSH is running Ubuntu Linux. So it's the underlying operating system is Ubuntu. So this is a Linux machine. So we're looking for a Unix. So if I just go to a typical Unix Python interpreter, I just want a reverse shell. I don't want interpreter. Bind, interpreter. Yeah, so let's do this one. If we do Unix shell reverse TCP, Unix shell reverse TCP, I like 23. I just don't want that interpreter shell, so I'm gonna do, I don't want SSL. Let's do 33, because it's gonna be a Python reverse shell. So if I do use 33, use payloads, or set payload 33. Okay. So now that we have that payload set, if I do show options, so we're looking at what's required to run this exploit. So it's requiring that we set a file name, and we set our localhost and local port. So after doing this, first off, this is my private IP on my virtual machine right now. This isn't my VPN IP. Because if I remember, the VPN IP is 10.10.14.43. So if I was to go forward with this exploit and detonate it, it wouldn't call back to my reverse. It wouldn't call back to my machine because I'm using the wrong IP. Due to I'm VPN'd into Hack the Boxes labs. So I'm going to set the localhost equal to my VPN IP, or just tune 0. As you can see, it changed to 10.10.14.43. Show options. I'm going to set the L port to 1137 for elite because I feel like doing so. And then I'm going to rename the file. So set file name bad.apk. I show options. Reading through it one last time, we have the file names rechanged, we have the correct localhost, and we have the correct local port. I'm going to go force and run this. All encoders fail to encode. So I'm guessing this is an issue with the payload. So let me try and change the payloads. If I go to, let's try the interpreter shell, the 23. Set payload 23. And if I run this, all failed to encode. I love when this happens. Let's try something even simpler. Let's just try a reverse bash. So set payload, I think that was 38. Run. Cool. So it wasn't liking the interpreter shells or anything with interpreter, I'm guessing because I have an encoding issue with my Kali, because my Kali is temperamental. But as you can see, it created this bad.apk file at my home directory in the Metasploit local cache. So if I go to my home directory, I do lsla, I should be able, this is way too zoomed in. So we have that directory, so the ms4. If I go to local, and there we go, there's my bad.apk. So I'm going to exit Metasploit, clear that screen. I'm going to set my netcat reverse, or netcat to listen to port, it's not 999, it's 1337. To listen to port 1337 because that's what we specified in this APK file. So if I go back to here and I choose Android and I give it whatever local host because it's just going to pull it from the template, and I browse to, when was this modified? 1249 EST. This should be the correct one. Browse to that and I hit generate. Hopefully it should call back based on that exploit because it's going to be running MSF Venom for that bad APK. And as you can see, we do get a call back from there. So if I run who am I, I'm Kid. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing Sam did. I'm going to make this a TTY shell just to make my eyes a little easier. Import pty.spawn bin bash. Cool. We're there. SCT raw echo. Cool. So we're in the HTML directory. Off the bat, we can sort of dig deeper into templates, the static. We can look more into the source code for this specific web page. But what I always do is I just go to the home directory of that user to get the flag. So we have cat user.txt, and there's the flag. So I'm going to take that. I think I already have submit the flag, submit that. Give it a, I'd say it's like a 3. I already have this machine owned and I haven't reset it, so it would accept the flag. I just need to reset the machine. But I'm not going to reset that because I don't want to break it during the middle of a demo. So if I run lstech.la, so we have write privilege over, we can read bash history, so we can see if there's anything in bash history. Nothing, because it's, so the reason there's nothing in bash history, as you can see, is pointing to dev null. So anything that's stored in a bash history is automatically deleted. Dev null is sort of the automatic trash can in my brain. That's how I correlate it to. So there's going to be nothing there. Bash logout, I don't really care about. We can dig into bash RC, but it's unlikely that there's any aliases set or anything there that would be of use. We have HTML, we have logs, we have snap. Let me check. See, there is another user called Pwn. So if we go to Pwn, that user's home directory, and see there is a scan losers.sh and there's a recon. So that is of interest. But before I do anything, I'm gonna do sudo attack L. I don't know kids' passwords, so that's gonna not work. So there's nothing we can take that avenue. I'm gonna check Etsy cron tab. There's no cron tab specified. A cron tab is like an automatic job or script that's run at a specific time. There's nothing there. If I go back to etc, I think it's cron.d. cat e2. That's just default scripts. Nothing of interest there. I think the other one's hourly that I'm always looking to. So hourly. Nothing. There's a placeholder. Root decap. Okay, so nothing there. So if I go back to the user's home directory, we can look. Let's try one more thing before I look more into that recon script. I'm going to check for SUIDs. Binaries with an SUID file set. So this allows the user to have more privilege running that binary. It's not full sudo privilege, but it's a little bit more. To look for those binaries, it's fine. So I'm checking the home machine using the /perm, and then I think it is 4000 if I remember correctly. And I'm pipe all standard output that is an error. So the 2 represents standard error. I'm piping that to dev null so I don't get a bunch of errors on my screen. We have mount. We have a bunch of things coming in. Okay. So we have at, Jeep, we have sudo, we have umount, change shell, pgexec, password. Nothing really stands out to me. These are all typical binaries that should have SUID bits set for this specific user. So I'm going to go back to that kids directory, the pwn directory, scan losers.sh, cat scan losers.sh. Okay. So the bash script, and that's of interesting. So it's taking a log file from my user's current directory. So we might be able to hijack that and input a shell there. So it's going line by line. So it's setting the log variable to this hacker's file. It's changing the directory to this user's home directory. It's reading out that log. It's cutting it based on a double space. So the delimiter is double space. So anything that has a double space is becoming a field. It's taking the field 3 backwards, if I read that correctly. It's sorting the unique, and then as well, it's reading the IP. It's going to run bash. So it's going to run nmap on that specific IP. So reading this, it looks like it's command injection. So if we are able to specify the IP, because it's taking the field after this delimiter, and it's reading out and setting it to the IP variable, and then it's using bash to run nmap on that variable. So if we can mess with this input for the log file, we should be able to do that. So to do so, my brain's thinking, okay, if we set a break into it, if we can break it here and then input a bash shell, it will run bash on that. So let's get to it. Let's go back a directory. Let's go to kid. It was in logs. And there we go. So we have read-write access, and then this is owned by pwn. So this looks like it's going to be the avenue to exploit to get the pwn users, get access to the pwn user. So what I'm going to do is, first off, I want to create a bash reverse shell. So my favorite website is called revshells.com. What this website will do is if you feed it your IP, which I always forget my IP, I should set it as a variable, 43. I'm going to set it on port, let's do 9997. And I set those up, and it gives you a reverse shell automatically. So we can choose bash, we can choose netcat, we can do C reverse shells, pretty much every language you can think of. If you want to encode it with base64 or URL encode it, you can choose a different shell you want, bash, sh, stuff like that. I'm just going to stick with the typical bash tac I, because that's good old and faithful. That always works for these Linux boxes. So now that I have my shell, we need to take into account that delimiter. So let's just try this. So first, the shell's at 9997. So netcat nvlp 9997, because I want to see if I can get get this, if this is the correct path to get this current user's callback to this before I have it run by pwn. That didn't really make sense, but what I'm going to do is echo, I'm going to make it a whole comment so it reads it from the kids directory and not pwn reading it from pulling it in through the log file to see if I can get a callback using this user instead of pwn to make sure this is the right vector. To do so, instead of running echo that, I'm going to actually just comment it all out and do echo. There's 2 delimiter spaces, so I'm going to do 1, 2, break that, run bin bash. We want to execute that, paste my reverse shell, comment that, and then we want to comment out the rest of that script. So I'm going to comment the rest of that script out. Yep, thank you. So let me just run that. Cool. So if I do echo that bin, I forgot that. So 1, 2, I think, I'm trying to remember, I had to put a single quote before this. No, it should be bin bash taxi, then single quote, the reverse shell, comment that out, and read that to hackers to the log file. Okay, and then comment that out. So if I run this, it's going to be echoing. It's going to mess with that delimiter that's set in this recon script. It's going to echo this bin bash, so it's going to execute a command in bash to run this bash reverse shell. Comment out everything after the IP input for that scan losers bash shell, and then input it to hackers. But since I have hackers commented out with echo, it should just read it from this user's directory, not pwn's directory. And I forgot a comma somewhere. Oh, I added an extra one. Let's try this. Echo in bash actually. Yep. There. There. I'm doing the same thing, aren't I? Okay, so if I do should be echo, then this, if I remember correctly. If not, I'm just going to try it for the pwn users directory. That hackers. There we go. Okay, so it works. So we know that's the way to get into pwn user. Because you can see I ran that, it ran from kids, the kid user, and I got a callback from, I should be kid, I am kid. Okay, so next step is just repeat that same process. I'm going to tweak this by 1 just in case I don't want to mess with my current shell on that port. I'm going to go here. I'm going to cancel that out. I'm going to run netcat on 9996. I'm going to do the same thing. So it's going to be, except I'm going to take out the quotes there. So I'm going to do echo 1, 2. Let's do the bin / bash taxi. That. I think I'm missing, I am missing a double quote. These quotes will be the life and death of me. So if I do echo, and then let's just quote that, bin bash taxi, run that, make sure that is closed, put that to hackers. And there we go. If I run who am I ID, I am now pwn. So now we're pwn, we're now the pwn user. If I do lstech LA, I can check, nothing really similar. Bash history is going to dev null. So the trusty old sudo tac l, and we can run metasploit as sudo with no password. So if we go back to GTFO bins, which is the website Sam demoed, GTFO bins that's not the right website. I don't know where I just went to. GTFO bins. There we go. If you're doing anything Linux, it's going to be GTFO bins. If you're doing anything with Windows, there's 2 good ones. There's Wadcom, which can help you based on if you have credentials, if you're trying to enumerate, exploit, privs, stuff like that. So Wadcoms is good for Windows, and there's also LOBAS, which is living off land binaries. So using built-in Windows binaries and functions to pivot laterally, horizontally, escalate your privileges, download files, stuff like that. So these are all good resources doing testing on Hack the Box and in penetration testing in general. But we had Metasploit running as ability to run sudo attack L. So if I do MSF console, my bad. MSF console, we have a shell, but we can run it as sudo. So the binary is allowed to run as super user by sudo, does not drop elevated privileges, may be used to access the file system, escalate and maintain privileges. Cool. So let's try sudo /op/metasploit framework. I always do absolute paths because I've had instances where not running absolute paths breaks things. So instead of doing just MSF console, I do the absolute path to ensure I'm hitting the right binary. If I run that, it should boot up Metasploit or the MSF console, Metasploit framework console. And there we go. So if I see the next step is running IRB, so we want an actual shell Metasploit, so IRB shell, and it's just running system bin/sh. Who am I? And there we go. Who am I? ID. So I'm now root after breaking out using Metasploit, which is a cool way to end a box, especially for a box named Scriptkiddie. So if I run to root.txt, sorry, that's not there. If I cd to root, and I can cat out the root flag, and then there we go. There's the root flag for Scriptkiddie, and then that's the box. Another interesting thing to always do, which I should have done earlier, is if you read out etc password, this is the password file, or this is it was the old school, it showed the user's password hash for a user. But typically, if you look for bin bash, you can find the users on this machine. So instead of checking the user home directory, if there's nothing there for pwn, we could have checked etc password and seen that he was a valid user. That's another thing another route we could have taken to get to this root flag. But other than that, the lab should still be up. The dedicated lab will be up, I think, for the next 24 to 48 hours, depending on, I forget how long it lasts, to be honest with you, but it should be up for the next day or so. Feel free to play around with the boxes if you want access to the box, any of the boxes to test out what we did today. Feel free to reach out to Samurai on Discord with any questions or concerns. The other last plug we have is the Hack the Box Cyber Apocalypse annual CTF has started, I think, today.
Yeah,
this morning or yesterday. Mm-hmm. Okay, sweet. I highly recommend that for everyone. I'll be playing it if I have some time. It's CTFs are what got both Sam and I really into cybersecurity and penetration testing in general. It's a great way to learn a wide variety of skills, not only pen testing, but also like forensics, IR, malware analysis, stuff like that. Other than that, I have nothing else to say. Sam, you have any last words or salutations? Okay.
Nope. Appreciate it.
Cool. Well, thank you all for coming. We hope you learned something today regarding these two boxes. I think the next meetup will be in the next month or so. We'll release some more information out on Meetup and as well as the Discord channel.
Yep.
But feel free to reach out with any questions. Thank you all.